Greetings everyone and welcome. It's once again time for another episode of The Captain's Table. This is episode 3, season 2. Now to recap a little bit of last week's episode, I did confirm that I was getting my hands on a vehicle. It was going to be my dad's old one, and that I was expecting a nice, quiet week to finish out my last, what was effectively 3 days at my former employer. Now, the last week has been kind of an interesting week, full of highs and full of lows. And they're highs and lows relative to the week, not life in general. So, to start off with, Sunday was Super Bowl Sunday. Now, my former employer was throwing their Super Bowl party, but simultaneously my dad was throwing theirs. Now, I opted to go over to my dad's house and watch the game there. Although, to be fair, I didn't really watch the game. I was there mostly to watch the commercials and to communicate, talk with, chat with, and catch up with various acquaintances that are his friends that I've met over the course of several years. Which actually kind of got interesting, as a couple of them who haven't seen or heard any news in the better part of a month to 2 months were there, and so they were excited to learn of all of these changes in my life. But the funniest thing that I think happened in this particular case was I was talking to one person who was in visiting from DC, and I mentioned that I had gotten my driver's license, a new job, and a new car. And he was super excited to see this vehicle that I'd gotten. Well, since it's my dad's old car, it's a vehicle that pretty much everybody who's been friends with my dad for the better part of a decade and a half knows full well.
Let them think that
But
the geniuses. Just as
people who
long as the
haven't
majority of the
kept in
profits
contact
ends up
for the
in
last
my
month
pocket.
probably aren't fully aware that that's now my car. So I get to go out, point at it because it was sitting there on the street, and comment, there it is. And of course my dad had picked up on the conversation, had wandered over, and had chimed in at the very end. Yes, my son got his driver's license and a new job, and I lost my car. But it's all, you know, in good fun there, that statement. My dad did have his vehicle fixed up nicely, got the oil changed, fixed a couple of the ventilation issues. The rear passenger fan control was not functioning in the vehicle, so he got that done. He didn't have time to go get the tires rotated or backup camera installed like he wanted to, but he did give me the backup camera and did let me know that there was a place that I could go to have that installed if I so wished. And I'm still debating on whether or not I'm going to do that, considering I'm not sure I'm going to drive that vehicle for more than, well, a year, maybe a year and a half. But he did have the car detailed for me on top of those additional fixes, so it was basically like getting into a brand new car off the car lot, which was really, really enjoyable, and really does kind of drive home that it's mine now. It's not his, it's mine. The only things in there are what belong to me, which is kind of cool, kind of crazy, but kind of cool. Of course, going forward with the rest of the evening, I progressively got drunker and drunker, and I can honestly say that I don't remember pretty much anything after halftime in the football game because, well, I was that obliterated with alcohol. The surprising thing on that was that I actually managed to get home, upload Monday's YouTube video, and I believe I spelled everything correctly on the title and with the tags in the video. Don't remember doing it, not sure how I managed it, but I did manage it, and I didn't have a hangover, which is, for me, kind of impressive. Worrying, but impressive. On Monday, I officially took possession of the car. Well, I officially took possession with my dad. I took possession of the vehicle. It's now mine. as far as we're concerned. Paperwork-wise, won't officially transfer any of the titles and stuff over to me until after I move, because it will be cheaper, as I previously mentioned in last week's episode. On Tuesday, I took the day off from what was effectively my last week at work anyway, and I decided that in that process of taking that day off, I was going down to my new work site, and I was going to tour the property to see what I was dealing with. And oh boy, I have just kind of jumped right in, head first, into a world of shit. Think of it, World of Warships. You're in a little destroyer, and you just come around the headland of an island and the cap point that you're contesting, only to find not only one, but all of the enemy destroyers, and they have a couple of cruisers that have radar as backup, and you don't have backup. That's almost what I feel like. It's you can survive, but it's gonna take some skill and some effort in order to do that. I think if I had jumped into this situation a year ago, I probably would have just noped right out of there. But I'm committed this time, and so here are some of the things I've got to deal with right off the bat. The building is a 1968 construction year, garden-style property. It means it's spread out over, you know, what is effectively an acre of land. There are 12 or so buildings housing a total of 200 units. They're a maximum of 2 stories, which is good. There's no elevators to deal with, but there are a plethora of stairwells and decks.
Too long intervals between
and all of the stairwells, now the decks I could understand because they're decks, but all of the stairwells are effectively open-air stairwells. Means there's no door, there's nothing, that you just walk up the stairs and you can knock on whoever's door you want to. There's no controlled access in that respect. But they're all original stairwells, with the exception of, I think, 4 of the buildings that they have been doing renovations on. They're all original stairwells. The stairwells are wood. Wood, painted or otherwise, in an open-air, temperature-fluctuating, moist environment for what is now 50 years? Yeah. Basically, I'm going to have to come in there and I'm going to have to start right away coordinating with or figuring out how I'm going to go in and replace all of those stairwells. And a good number of the decks as well. Now, some of the decks have started to be replaced because they are just that bad. But it is going to be a major project that I'm going to have to start, at the very least, and get underway. And whether or not I stay there through its completion, that's another question. But at the very least, I will try to get it dealt with. Combine that with several of the buildings, again, 12 buildings. Several of them have some gutter issues, like the drainage lines from the gutters are just missing and need to be replaced. So several of them need that. Several of the gutters themselves look like they need to be replaced, and I have no idea in what condition the roofs are in. I don't even want to think about that prospect right now until I deal with some of the other stuff. So yeah, to start off right away, I'm jumping in headfirst into a world of shit. But this is something that, well, I kind of expected when I heard that it was an older building. And to be fair, the way I tend to operate, if my employer thrusts me into this kind of situation, I tend to be very unhappy and disgruntled about it. But if I jump head first into the situation, well, now I've gotten my own self into it, so now I'm going to deal with it. I'm either going to grow and develop, or I'm going to fail miserably and decide I want out. So in this respect, I'm jumping in head first of my own decision, which means hopefully I'll grow and develop with the skills that I need to really excel in the position. After that, Wednesday, I went back to work for what was supposed to be my last 3 days of employment with my former employer. My last day basically being Friday. Well, I didn't really expect to do much in those 3 days. To be fair, there were some projects that I wanted to work on, some things I wanted to finish up before I left, specifically some of the residents that I wanted to get into contact with and make sure they had my contact info because I'd like to continue communicating with them. I also needed to start pulling all of my tools and resources that I had brought over the 3 years that I've worked there and take them home with me so that I'm not leaving them anything that isn't theirs. Wednesday was a particularly slow day, didn't do too much. Did end up talking with one of the residents, which was kind of fortunate. Somebody who basically they have a lot of contacts in various industries, and one of the things that he commented on was how wonderful my voice sounds. And he suggested that I look into doing some voiceover work. Surprisingly enough, not the first time I've heard that, which is one of the reasons why you wonderful folks get these videos. So I let him know that I would be happy to do that, but I don't have anybody in the industry that I know that I can reach out to and get some, you know, intermittent work from time to time and develop that voice and develop the brand. He said that he did know somebody in the industry, but they were in Vancouver, but they might know people in Seattle. So he was going to reach out to that guy, took down my email address, and, you know, hopefully I'll hear something from them in the future for some voiceover work. It would be, you know, pretty happy if I could get a couple $100 extra every month doing that. Turned out, though, that this was a really, really good timed event to occur on Wednesday. On Thursday, I rolled into work, clocked in, started to do some of the work that I wanted to complete before I finished, and I was basically planning to end my last day finishing up one last apartment turn. Well, at 11 o'clock, I got a text message telling me to come down to the main office. And when I went down there, the manager and the supervisor were both there, and the manager basically told me that we've decided to restructure the maintenance department so that we're basically going to be contracting out your position and all of the work that you do, so effective immediately, we're just going to go ahead and let you go. That's right. My former employer decided to, what is effectively, fire me. They basically terminated my employment early,
I know the
but
problem.
it's still, they
Those
basically
damn hot
fired
water
me
pumps.
2 days
Be honest. You'd
before
also love to work
my
for me
last
too.
day. Like, I don't know what kind of decision making is going through your head that you would opt to do that. At the very least, I'm still here. I still showed up. I'm still doing things that you're asking, like work orders and apartment turns. You technically had me for, at that point, something like 14 more hours of employment. Why would you not utilize me? Because I know you're busy. I know you're running around with your heads cut off like chickens. Because residents have been complaining shit doesn't get done, or hasn't been getting done in the last month, month and a half. And you decide you're going to go ahead and let me go. The logic is beyond me. And, even more so, the fact that they decided they were going to go ahead and contract out my position for painting and unit turns and some maintenance stuff makes, I mean, that's like the most asinine thing in the world. Because they didn't pay me enough money. I was grossly underpaid. Instead of paying me more money, or instead of finding somebody else that they would be willing to, you know, work for them, but who they were going to have to pay more money, they decided to not just pay more money, they decided to basically pay double that amount to contract that out to bring in an employee who A, has no loyalty to the building, and B, probably is going to end up making just barely more than I was getting paid, so in reality, they're not going to get much more work ethic out of that person, and because they have no loyalty to the residents, they just won't give a fuck. Alright, good luck with that. It was nice to have basically a day and a half off extra, but I had no idea what to do with myself. And I was kind of pissed off that they just up and let me go when they did, because, again, there were still some residents that I wanted to reach out to and get in contact with. And basically I was being told, alright, get out, drop your keys on the desk and leave. The good news is I did have the foresight to foresee this possibility, and I had already begun taking all of my supplies home, and pretty much at the end of it, the only thing that I still needed to bring back with me was my cell phone charger. And that was it. I had already taken everything else home the days leading up to that. So, I spent Thursday doing nothing, and I spent Friday doing nothing. Kind of had a bit of a drunken weekend, which was kind of wonderful because it's basically the last long drunken weekend I'm going to get to have. Which was nice. Went out, had drinks with a friend, celebrated my new employment, and caught up with him, which was wonderful. Going forward in the coming up week, the plan of action is basically I'm going to be showing up at 9 a.m. on Monday. Normally my schedule would be 8 to 5, but I'm showing up at 9 a.m. on Monday because I won't have keys, and there are still some onboarding programs and things that I'm going to need to do, and there's going to be a lot of communication back and forth with the manager about things, as well as just getting myself acclimated to the property, figuring out where things are, so on and so forth. So 9 a.m. on Monday, which is a little bit of a nice thing. It's going to be, I think, an hour less on that day itself, and then after that, it'll be an 8 a.m. work day. I do need to ask what my clock in and clock out for my onboarding is going to be, because I have new hire in-person training and onboarding at a different location separate from my property that I have to go to, and that starts at 9.
Free and independent
so I do need to
journalism.
ask about that, but that is fortunately, that's on Wednesday, so I've got Monday to ask that and Tuesday to confirm, and then I can go to that. And that onboarding will include company asbestos training. It's not an official certification, it's just a basic asbestos training class with the company to understand the principles behind it, you know, what they do and do not cover as far as that.
You have a new toy.
Which, if you've worked in maintenance, is pretty easy to figure out with the basics of asbestos. If you've worked in it long enough, you know, well, don't let it aerosolize. And if you're going to be in a position where there's the potential of aerosolizing it, put a mask on. It's that simple. And at some point at the beginning of April, following SakuraCon, I will be attending a county pool and spa training and certification course, because new property has a pool, so I am going to have to be certified to deal with that, to make sure that it's at the right pH level. Otherwise, that's a huge problem, especially with private property situations in apartment living. If it was a public pool that was operated by the city, you know, that's one thing, but this is a private pool, but it's not private. It gets very, very complicated. I don't even want to think about the complexities behind that. The only thing I care about is the certification for proper chemical balances and safety in the certification. Anyway, That's it for today's video, folks. If you liked the video, hit that like button, leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. And as always, I'll see you next time.
Such a fuss.
This is Captain Rye,
A bit of bad press
signing
never
off.
hurt anyone.